Alien and Sedition Acts by
Peter Shea
and Blake Ankner. The Alien and Sedition Acts of 1789. What was it? So to first understand it, you have to understand that in Great Britain, we were suppressed. Like, we didn't have freedom of speech, and that was one of the reasons we left. So the Sedition Act was just following in their footsteps. And so what was the Sedition Act? The Sedition Act was suppressing the freedom of speech and controlling what we could say about the U.S. government. And the Alien Act was keeping out the French during the French Revolution. So the Sedition Act was actually published on July 14th of 1789. And Alien and Sedition Acts, they were different acts, but they were just published in the same summer, so they put them together.
So the case for and the case against the Alien Sedition Act. So for it, this would make the citizens more loyal to their country because it's harder to get to become a citizen again to America. It would make it safer from the aliens of or France, because we were in like a halfway war with them called the Quasi-War, which is overseas by a bunch of French rebels and like American cargo ships. They just kept like taking them over. And also, this helped John Adams had the chance of being reelected. He didn't, but 47% of them liked it because the French liked Thomas Jefferson and the Republicans. So the case against was that it broke the First Amendment, the freedom of the speech, or the press, because they couldn't write anything in the newspapers that were talking bad about them. And also, if you're one of the 53% that liked Thomas Jefferson, you didn't want this to happen because it hurt your odds. And also like the immigrant vote, as I said earlier, was mainly towards the Republicans.
So which civil liberties were violated? We feel that the First Amendment and the Eighth Amendment. The first because it was controlling freedom of speech, as we said, and then the Eighth Amendment because during a time of war, we should take in refugees, and so we feel it's cruel and unusual to the French. It's a little weird, but this is a little diagram I made where it's between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, and the French are in the middle, and they are just kind of like being pushed around because Thomas Jefferson wants them in the country and John Adams doesn't.
And so who did this help? The people or the government? So there's the French Revolution. So John Adams decided to make it harder, to make it like a 5 to 14 year wait to become a citizen. The French citizens wanted to move into America because it was a free country and to get away from what was happening in France during the French Revolution. And John Adams, he knew that the election was coming up against Thomas Jefferson as vice president, and he knew that that was his biggest opponent, and that Thomas Jefferson really loved the French. The French loved him. Thomas Jefferson designed his house after the French, like the way they designed buildings.
This is a little video. Can we watch it? Yeah. Say it again. Just quick.
As the 18th century was coming to a close, the nation experienced its first crisis in freedom, a freedom it had wrested from Great Britain 17 years earlier, freedom of press and speech. The framers of the Constitution understood that monarchs and tyrannies maintained power by prohibiting any criticism of their rule. So the framers explicitly provided for open criticism of the government through the First Amendment. Still, there have always been those tempted to abuse the power of the federal government. The first time arose in 1798 after France and Britain had renewed their centuries-old conflict. The Federalists sided with Britain, and the Republicans supported France. Led by John Adams, the Federalists attempted to restrict criticism aimed at their policies by their Republican rivals. In the summer of 1798, a Federalist-dominated Congress passed some of the most repressive measures ever enacted by the U.S. government. 2 alien acts directly targeted immigrants thought to be sympathetic with Republican ideas, making it harder for those aliens to become citizens. and giving the president power to deport anyone considered dangerous to the welfare of the country. The Sedition Act directly targeted Republican political activity. The act fined and imprisoned anyone conspiring with any intent to oppose any laws of the government or presenting opposition through the media.
Printing, writing, or speaking in a scandalous or malicious way against the government of the United States, either House of Congress or the President, with the purpose of bringing them into contempt.
The majority of the American public so roundly hated the Alien and Sedition Acts that they turned the Federalists out of office by electing Thomas Jefferson in 1800. The new Republican government, led by Jefferson, repealed the Alien Acts and allowed the Sedition Act to expire, ending a dark era in American history. However, Americans would now have to be ever vigilant, especially in wartime, as many attempts would be made by Congress and the presidency to restrict individual freedom. These have included the Espionage Act of 1917, the War Powers Act of 1941, and the Patriot Act of 2001.
Alright, that's the video. And next is bibliography. Thank you.
Any questions for these guys?
Questions?
Okay.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.